There was an article just like a year or two ago in The Guardian where scientists were measuring frequencies that was traveling between mycelium, and they identified what seemed to appear to be as much as 50 words that mushrooms are actually like communicating to each other. It was such a fascinating article, and I write about mushrooms, on a monthly basis. So you get every Google alert there is for mushrooms in the news and in the media, and Prince Harry talking about his mushroom experience, whatever it is. And there's no shortness of weirdness and stuff that seems to defy how we understand nature.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode.
Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Robert Johnson. He is the founder of Mycroboost, which is a functional mushroom company that offers a variety of mushroom products which enhance energy, brain function, the microbiome, and overall wellness. Robert is a seasoned cannabis and hemp industry veteran, a startup founder, a product developer, business consultant, and CEO of supplement manufacturer Custom Capsule Consultants. We talk about some of the specific uses of different mushrooms and the quality control he uses at his company. We talk about mushroom coffee. I didn't know anything about mushroom coffee. And then we get into a long talk about psychedelics and the variety of uses and what the future might hold for that industry. It seems to be evolving in the same way the cannabis industry has. Robert is very passionate about all things mushrooms. He has a vast knowledge. It's a really fun talk. So here he is. This is Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson, I'm so glad you're here, and we had a nice little pre-conversation, and we're going to be talking about mushrooms and some psychedelic stuff and different types of mushrooms and the things you've been doing. And I know you have a company called Mycroboost, which I went on the website and saw all the interesting combinations of things that you make. Let me ask you this first. This is not even anything. Mushroom coffee, I hear about it. I don't know what it is. And I think, well, there's no caffeine, is there? Where am I getting the buzz from the coffee?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different mushroom coffee products on the market now. Mycroboost is like some of them where we use a little bit of coffee in it. So it's about a third of a cup of coffee, like caffeine wise. But, coffee is the most consumed drug on the planet. And so we are looking for, I think these mushroom companies are looking for a product that people can really get into the habit of taking, and get it as part of their routine because, while mushrooms are really good for you, the functional ones are like most supplements or vitamins, meant to be taken on a regular basis. So I think that's the impetus for coming up with a form factor like coffee is, find something that people are going to want to take on a daily basis. And so a lot of these coffees taste pretty bad, and that was one thing that I found when we were developing ours and trying a bunch of what was out there was, thinking, man, it's really going to be hard for people to change their habits, drinking coffee for 20, 30, 50 years if the product doesn't taste great. So we added some cacao. So ours is kind of like a chocolatey drink that has 3,000 milligrams of mushrooms per container. But typically you don't make it like in a coffee machine, but just like stir it into some hot water or milk or a milk alternative. And I spice mine up with a little bit of cinnamon, a little sweetener, and it's pretty choice.
Sounds great. Yeah, I actually put lion's mane in my coffee. So that's probably the only mushroom that I consume. And I know there's so many different kinds. Let's talk about some of the ones that you sell at Mycroboost, because I was interested in, I looked and saw what they each did, but maybe you can explain that to the audience.
Yeah, so I got into mushrooms working in my company, Custom Capsule Consultants. And during the pandemic, we were getting a lot of requests for cognitive enhancing products or nootropic products. I think a lot of people were working from home, trying to find, new routines to focus on their work and balancing life and work. And so lion's mane was something that just kept repeatedly getting brought up. And so that is probably, of all the functional mushrooms, the most popular or well known. I think the name is really cool, which helps for that. But it affects your brain in ways that are pretty interesting. They do two things. One is called neuroplasticity. And so it's actually creating new neural connections in your brain. It's the same thing that gets talked about a lot with microdosing psychedelics, because, in extreme cases with psychedelics, these new connections create what is called like synesthesia, where you can see music or taste color, these connections that are not normally formed, right? But in small doses, I think it's just helping you kind of create new habits, new neural pathways, which is something that the lion's mane does as well. And then also neurogenesis, so it forms new brain cells. So when I was growing up and my mom would catch me smoking weed, she would say, you're going to lose those brain cells and they're never coming back. But now with lion's mane, we're getting those brain cells back, Mom.
Yeah, let's hope so. I don't want to be losing brain cells. I feel as pretty much as sharp as I did when I was a young person. Maybe sharper because I'm not doing all the other stuff that I was making me, whacked out. So I'm going to go with I'm better.
Yeah, lion's mane is definitely a popular one. I also really like cordyceps mushrooms. Cordyceps is a natural source of energy. It's also really good for the lungs, for the respiratory system. And so athletes often use it as a pre-workout, as a way to get more oxygen into their lungs and more energy to power through their workout. It was the source or the subject of a fictional show on HBO, right? There's over 400 different types of cordyceps on Earth. And this show, The Last of Us, was based on a video game about this fictional form of cordyceps that like turns humans into zombies. There is an actual strain of cordyceps that does turn ants into zombies, which I assume is the inspiration for that story. But mushrooms do all sorts of crazy things. That being one of the strangest, where the spores actually like grow into the ant, and it can control the ant like almost like a remote control car, and then have the ant go into the colony and spread the mycelium and take over the entire ant colony. So, that show came out. It's cool to see, mushrooms in the media more and more, although there is some mycophobia in this country and others. And I fear that it contributes a little bit to that. But if anyone's seen that show, that's not a real strain of cordyceps, but Cordyceps militaris is what we use, and is a great product. And we combine the lion's mane and cordyceps together for this brain soft gel that we make at Mycroboost.
Yeah, and I saw reishi mushrooms were in there too.
Yeah. Reishi is another really powerful one. It's known by the Chinese as the mushroom of immortality. It's really good for anti-anxiety, anti-inflammation, and it really is good for the gut microbiome. I think besides the brain, the health of our gut really contributes the most to our energy, our outlook, our perspective, and it affects our brain as well. So, and I always say that mushrooms, just like in nature, mycelium is the root system that the mushrooms are all connected by, right? And in nature, mycelium can spread nutrients, information to different parts of the forest, and it helps to really balance the ecosystem. And I think mushrooms, this is just my theory, but I think they work in humans the same way. So, one person who has one issue or another, those I think the mushrooms know how they can help us, and the more that we take them, the better off we are for it.
Well, I did see some documentary, the name of which I can't remember, about this very thing you're talking about. And the idea of intelligence in plants is a really interesting idea, because I mean, obviously there's intelligence in everything in the universe, or, everything has some type of intelligence, but that it could transfer, and like the mushrooms can, in the root system, can speak to each other, trees as well. And it's an interesting concept to ingest them and have that sort of idea of that kind of natural intelligence, earth intelligence, let's call it, in our bodies. I mean, that would make a lot of sense to have to take that in, as opposed to Doritos.
I'm endlessly fascinated by it. There was an article just like a year or two ago in The Guardian where scientists were measuring frequencies that was traveling between mycelium, and they identified what seemed to appear to be as much as 50 words that mushrooms are actually like communicating to each other. Is such a fascinating article, and I write about mushrooms, on a monthly basis. So you get every Google alert there is for mushrooms in the news and in the media, and Prince Harry talking about his mushroom experience, whatever it is, and there's no shortness of weirdness and stuff that seems to defy how we understand nature.
Pretty fascinating stuff. And, I think sort of people's first reaction is like, that's way too out there, and I'm not going to buy that. But I do. I don't know. I don't understand it, but I do buy that there's something going on that I don't understand, but it's there.
That's what just really attracts me to it. I have my most recent article coming out here soon in Rolling Stone is about exactly that. And, it's kind of a pivot to psychedelic mushrooms, but now, because of the changing laws and lots of investment that is going into studying psychedelics, I think they're starting to prove with empirical evidence some of these theories that have been like shaman or hippie mumbo jumbo to people for so many years. And that is something that I find extremely fascinating. That the idea of the existence of other dimensions, or a sixth sense like intuition really being able to be honed, and what we perceive that just appears to be thoughts or imagination can actually be some communication that is from our highest self, and also our connection to nature. And obviously there's going to be a bunch of skeptics, but now I think really these far out there theories are becoming the hypotheses that these scientists are using to test, can we really prove that mushrooms or these other psychedelics are doing this? And now with the funding and behind the research, we're every day kind of finding out new things. And as it's step by step, right? It's like, oh yeah, we really thought this was impossible, and now we can see that we were wrong. It just also makes me think, like, what else are we wrong about?
Yeah, I always thought that it was not looked at as a positive thing. This is my own little theory here, because what it did for me at the times I did psychedelics, and this is many decades ago, let's put it that way. Yeah. That it gave me an insight into looking through the facade of society and seeing things in a way that I hadn't seen them before. And that's disruptive to the people that are in control of things. And I would think that those same people would not want more of that sort of expanded kind of a view of things. But then on the other hand, maybe it's going to make people happier in some way if they can not be such a slave to some of this conventional thinking that doesn't work.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And before psychedelics were criminalized in 1969 by Richard Nixon, there were thousands of research papers about it, mostly with with psychologists that were using LSD primarily with their patients, and there were international conferences and a lot of interest from the mainstream, or at least from that psychology industry. And then, of course, when Timothy Leary starts talking about tune in and turn off, drop out, and then the hippie movement and the anti-war movement, all are supporters of cannabis and LSD. Yeah, it became Nixon's number one domestic threat. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And just yesterday, the DEA announced that they're rescheduling cannabis. Previously, or since cannabis has been criminalized, it's been scheduled as a Schedule I drug, meaning it is just as dangerous as heroin. LSD, mushrooms are all in that same category. Schedule II drugs include like methamphetamine, cocaine. So the government for decades has said the cannabis is worse for us than meth and cocaine, but now just announced yesterday they're going to be rescheduling it to Schedule III. So it's really awesome. As growing up, I went to high school in Texas. That's the first time I ever smoked cannabis, and they have really draconian laws there around cannabis, and I experienced those firsthand. And so it's just really inspiring to see a movement for legalizing of these things that, enough people had that same experience that you were talking about, where they're just like, I tried this and I don't think the government's right about it. I think, we should change this. And now over 40 states in the country have some form of medical or legal for adult use cannabis. And I think it's like the most success story of activism of this generation, changing these laws. So
yeah, it was really from the ground up. That's for sure. That didn't come from the top. It came from just so many people going, "This is something I want to do, and I'm going to do it." And you can't stop that level of majority. You just can't do it. It's too much power and too much energy. You can't do it. So that is what happened. I think you described that exactly how I saw it. I was wondering about some of the psychedelic stuff that you have been involved with researching and learning about, and where you got interested in that, and where do you think it's headed? Because I've heard a lot of different pieces of it, with in psychiatry and microdosing for depression, even LSD microdosing for. I think there was a woman that wrote a book about it. There's probably more than one, but she said it really helped her. I just wonder where you're at on that, and where you kind of learned about this and became interested.
Well, I think, I was in cannabis since 2008 here in Los Angeles. So for 10 years, I was a part of that industry and watched it go from, underground to medical to recreational and full on legal here. So I think cannabis is really that gateway drug, if you will, for legalizing these other plant-based medicines. The big difference, and what I find more fascinating than cannabis, is all of the other parties that are interested in this. There are synthetic versions of THC. That's called Marinol. It's been around since the 60s, 70s. But pharmaceutical companies makes Marinol. But it's compared to actual plant material, I've heard, never tried it before, that it's really, not the same thing, not a good substitute. Now with these psychedelic compounds, you can't patent nature, right? Pfizer can't say, all right, now we own, psychedelic fungus, but they can take the molecules that are psychoactive in mushrooms, LSD, tweak them just a little bit, and patent them. So the interest from pharmaceutical companies is a big difference between the interest from pharmaceutical companies in cannabis. And so consequently, I think that will expedite federal legalization a lot faster than cannabis did, just because of the lobbying and the money behind big pharma. And so that is really interesting. And And the potentiality is definitely why mushrooms are having this moment, because all of this research is going into it, and articles and books like How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan, maybe that documentary Fantastic Fungi is on Netflix, has had millions and millions of streams. And so, a lot of these papers and stuff, or even just the headlines, would kind of suggest that psychedelics can be this panacea, sort of cure-all magic pill. And from somebody who's worked in supplements and plant-based medicine for a long time, I could tell you, there is no magic bullet for anything. I think the reason why the investments in psychedelics, or the stocks, have kind of gone down over the past couple of years is because there's not the ability to have yet, anyways, conclusive clinical trials with psychedelics the same way you can with pharmaceuticals, for two main reasons, I think. One, the people who take the placebo know they took the placebo, because it's a big difference between, taking a sugar pill and, 4 grams of mushrooms. But the other one is that pharmaceuticals are designed to change your brain, from A to B or A to Z, and in a certain way. And, they can do clinical trials and say, hey, 8.5 out of 10 people went from A to Z as we intended. Therefore, this pill works. Whereas with mushrooms, I think the intention of the user and the desire of the user plays a huge part, right? So mushrooms, anecdotally, have been, proven, in individual basis to be great for treatment-resistant depression and anxiety and eating disorders and, a whole plethora of disorders. But it really depends on the person. You take it, and if you want to change, I think that psychedelics kind of enhances your awareness to a level, or kind of, breaks that facade, as you said, to allow you to make that decision, because you see things more clearly about how you're going to change your patterns. But it's not as cut and dry as, you just take the mushroom and then you're a better person and happier. So I think as more and more research is done, and what I find really interesting about that is that if we continue to do research in that direction, then we are going to have to discuss the power of intentionality, and that becoming empirically proven that like a thought or a desire in our head can change our outcome. You can use the mushroom as a tool, but it's really us doing it. I think that will be, really awesome to people. I think a lot of people, probably like you and me, know that like as like an intuitive feeling or a fact, right? That what we think can become reality. But if scientists come out and say like, yeah, just like you can manifest in real time in a dream, the only difference in our linear experience is that time takes a little longer to turn that thought into reality.
Yeah, it's amazing how powerful the mind is in thought. I was wondering about, since I know you were in the supplement area too, here's what I never know. I never know, and I don't even know how to determine this, and maybe there's some sort of a place to figure this out. Like, what's the dosage that I take of any supplement? I'm so confused by it. I read a label and it'll say, oh, there's this much zinc, there's this much this in it, and I'm like, well, how do I know what that even means? How do I relate? Do I determine that by my body weight? Is it just trial and error, which I think a lot of it is for me with different things? I have to see if it works and how I feel. I just don't know. I mean, you have to determine milligrams of things in your products. How do you come up with this stuff? How do you figure it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can go in a lot of directions with it. I think I'd stick with mushrooms for starters here. So it's true, if you Google, how much lion's mane should you take in a day, depending on who you ask, it's anywhere between 800 and 3,000 milligrams. It's a pretty big spectrum, but I would have a lot of supplement customers that would contact me, and they want to put lion's mane or ashwagandha or elderberry or whatever the trendy supplement of the moment is. And my job as their manufacturer and consultant would be to tell them like, hey, we can put these ingredients in there, but there's really not going to be enough room for each of them in a significant amount for them to really do anything. So unless we're making like a 3-4 pill serving size, you guys are going to kind of have to pick and choose. And they're like, oh no, we just want to have all these on the label. They're popular. That's what people are buying, right? And so with mushrooms, so with all supplements, one, it's not a super regulated industry. It's not regulated at all. And so the quality of the ingredients is really huge. Like when people we make soft gels at Mycroboost and custom capsules, and the variance that is tolerable for what goes into a soft gel as far as the supplements are concerned is like 1 or 2%, plus or minus. And it's pretty spot on. But in like a 2-piece capsule that's filled with powder is so hard to get that homogeneous and consistent that within the supplement industry, a plus minus of 22% is acceptable for how much of what is actually in that product. But with mushrooms, and this goes a little further into the weeds, right? When you see a product that claims 1,000 milligrams of reishi mushrooms, what I discovered is that a lot of these mushroom brands will not use the actual mushroom that grows out of the substrate, the stem and the cap. That's what is known as a fruiting body, right? But when you're growing these mushrooms commercially, they're grown on a starchy block substrate, usually made with like corn, oats, or grain. And that substrate is inoculated with the spores. And those spores form the mycelium, which is the root system of the mushroom. And from there, the fruiting bodies, the stem and cap, grow. So at Mycroboost and any brand that is using fruiting bodies, they'll take that fruiting body and make their product out of it. With Mycroboost, we even make an extracted, like concentrated form of it, and then put it into our product so we can just have it that much more powerful in small little form factors like gummies and soft gels. But what I was really shocked to discover was that a lot of mushroom brands just purchase the grow substrate from the farmers. So they don't take the more expensive fruiting bodies, but they take the myceliated oats and pulverize those and sell that as, your 1,000 milligrams of reishi. And so for one of my Rolling Stone articles, I really dive deep into understanding, what is that difference between using, health-wise or benefits-wise, between using that myceliated oats and the fruiting body. And going into the research, I assumed that maybe it would be like a 10x difference of the health beneficial benefits in the fruit versus the mycelium. And I found out it was closer to 500 to 1. So a lot of these companies it's a challenge for a lot of mushroom brands. And the article was about a petition that is actually to the FDA for truth in labeling in mushrooms. And they're asking, hey, if you're using myceliated oats, that's fine. We just ask that you don't call it a mushroom or put any sort of mushroom imagery on the packaging, because it's really confusing to the customer. And so if it's a difference of 500x and you're on Amazon and you see a big, container that looks like a protein powder that's filled with these capsules for $29.99, and Mycroboost has a little, soft gel pill jar, 30 pills for $24.99, you look at the cost per pill and think that one is a tremendous value over the other. But, when you look at the actual contents, one pill of our Mycroboost is more than that entire, creatine size jar of myceliated oats capsules. So it's really tough. I was in the CBD industry, and I think it was the fastest boom to bust industry because there were so many people racing to make products, and people tried these subpar products and kind of ruled out CBD as helpful for them. and I don't want to see that happen with mushrooms, because I think they're, so powerful that, people could be missing out on something that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how you find out if it's not labeled. I don't know how you would even know, other than I assume the price would kind of give it away. Kind of you get what you pay for, probably, because I think most companies want to get to as low a price point as they can and still make money. They're not gonna overcharge and lose customers. I think, with just even the smallest amount of integrity, you want to sell a lot, but if that's what it costs, that's what it costs, and it's probably lines up with the quality, and particularly with what you're talking about.
Yeah, and hopefully something like this FDA petition will go through. Some brands will say myceliated oats, in fine print on the back, but lion's mane mushrooms in 48 font on the front. But you can go on the frequently asked questions, and typically I say, like, hey, if you ask if it's made with fruiting bodies and you get anything less than a straightforward yes or no answer, then it's not. As the market is becoming more educated, more brands that are using fruiting bodies are really, promoting that. And, I try not to diss other brands to promote my own. But Mycroboost is a great brand. People want to try it. Of course, I encourage them to do that. But definitely look for that difference between fruit body versus myceliated oats.
Well, you see it in a lot of areas. Like, for example, when people buy grass-fed beef,
mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's grass-fed up to a point, and then it's like finished. It's not grass finished. It's finished with feed. And,
right.
and so you go to Whole Foods, it's grass. They say it's grass fed, but it's not grass finished. If that matters to you, that's a big difference. And that's one of the reasons they can charge a little bit less than you would have to pay somewhere else that takes that beef all the way through in a pasture.
Yeah. I think everybody has different ideas of success. I think I would make more money at my companies and with my brands if my goal was to just find the cheapest way to make a product and kind of trick people into just believing that placebo effect is really working for them. But my strategy has always been to make the best possible product that I would want to take, that I would want to give to my friends and family, that I could say with a straight face that this is going to be helpful for you. And work our way backwards from there. And I don't even understand actually the business model of, making a product that doesn't have enough of something in it to have the effect. It's really costly to acquire the trust of a new customer. And if you're just counting on them to believe that placebo effect for the lifetime, then it doesn't seem like
it's sort of a short-term thinking. It's, you're not going to retain that customer probably if you get them once and then they're gone, or twice maybe.
Well, I'm just hoping it doesn't turn people off to mushrooms altogether, having a subpar product. So
yeah, I don't think so. I think, I think there's enough information that's getting put out there that, so basically what we're saying here is try quality. If you're going to do it, and if you haven't done it and you want to experiment with some of these products, get a good product. Try that first and see if it has an effect. I take this lion's mane. I don't even know how much to put in. I didn't even read the label. I just sort of looked at the size of the container and went, oh, I could use one of those like mini half a teaspoon spoons, because it seems like it'd be, if I use a teaspoon, I'd go through it too fast.
Gotcha.
That's how I figured it out. The writing is so damn small on the package, I can't even look at it. I have to get a magnifier. But it's a legitimate guy, so that's where I'm getting it from. Somebody that has been involved in that business for a very long time and has a lot of great videos out and stuff. This guy, Paul Stamets, is that his name? Stamets?
Yeah. Most famous mycologist in North America.
Yeah, really interesting talks I've heard him on. So
I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try this. This makes a lot of sense. So that's my lion's mane story. Not a great one, but it's a story. Okay,
Gotcha.
now there was something else that you were talking about, and I was in the, I guess it was a bio I got or something. Kratom. I don't even know. I see it. I see it at smoke shops, and I go, "What the hell is that?" And I know people have had problems with it in terms of almost like addiction type problems with it. I would never try it just for that reason, but and I also don't like the hard consonants, so I don't like the word. It bothers me.
Yeah, yeah.
The word bothers me. So I don't know what that means, but what is it? And what's it supposed to be for? And how do people use it?
You're definitely not the first person to say kratom was a bad name for marketing, but what it is it's a tree native to Southeast Asia that is like a cousin of the coffee plant. And so natives who are, working hard labor jobs, 10, 12 hours a day, will chew the leaves of the kratom tree, and that gives them energy and also pain relief for their backbreaking labor. And so since like the late 90s, people have been importing kratom from Indonesia and Southeast Asia. And it does have it affects or attaches to most of our opiate receptors, but not all of them. And it's interesting in the sense that in small amounts, the active in kratom is called metrogenine. And so in small amounts of metrogenine from 15 to 40 milligrams, it really has more of a caffeine-like effect. It gives you a bunch of energy and also a little bit of pain relief. I think it's a great hangover cure. But in larger amounts, it has more of an opiate-like effect. And so people use it to kick harder drugs, heroin or Suboxone or whatever opiates they're addicted to. But yeah, you're totally right that it does have addicting properties. I mean, it is a cousin of the coffee plant, which is also extremely addicting. People just get used to it and consequently have to take more to have the same effect. But it is one of those plants, not as popular as mushrooms or cannabis, but one that the FDA, DEA for the past 25 years has been trying to outlaw. And it's the activists that continue to keep it legal in this country, and they come forward and talk about how it has really changed their lives, not only kicking harder substances, but really dealing with pain. And it is extremely powerful pain reliever. And if people need that, the difference between taking a plant-based pain reliever and oxycodone is much healthier.
Well, yeah. Now I've learned about it. I didn't know. It just the name was such a turnoff to me, and then I heard these stories. So obviously, done the right way, it can be very helpful. Is what I'm getting from this. Yeah.
For sure.
Okay, here's one that wasn't on your list of things that you were talking about, but I'll bet you know about it, and I see it a lot advertised on social media. Shilajit, is that how you pronounce it?
Shilajit,
Yeah. Tell me about this. I tried it for a month, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was really pretty. It wasn't it wasn't like some life-changing thing, but it was a little bit earthy, sticky, earthy kind of a feel and smell to it, and
yeah, I remember we worked with Shilajit on a couple of different products. They were all male enhancement products, actually. So it has some good properties for that. And beyond that, I remember it had some other health properties, but I can't recall. Besides,
all right. So you checked it out a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And my buddy was doing it, and he recommended it. So and an MD who's a friend of his told him about it. So I said, that's pretty good info. I guess I'll try it.
It is, it's expensive, so one thing when I'm looking at
it is
supplements, if you have Shilajit in a supplement, it's probably somebody like me that really cares about making a quality supplement rather than a cheap supplement. So that's one thing that I always notice when I see that on the label.
Yeah, this was just the like supposedly pure sticky stuff. I don't know how they extract it or anything. That's it. I like that part of it just because I like that kind of earthy thing. I've always been attracted to things that seem like they come right out of the ground or a plant or, I like that. I like those smells. I've always been attracted to them.
Yeah. I think it comes from like India and that area originally, but
yeah, like the Himalayas or something. I don't know. I haven't had anybody on the show that knows a lot about it, so I just thought I'd ask you. I don't even know if I'll put this part in the final episode. We'll find out.
Okay.
What would you like to talk about the most? Like now that we've covered all these things, is there an area that I haven't hit on that you really would like to explore a little bit?
More about psychedelics, and I think the legalization is definitely interesting, and we're seeing a lot of change right now. So, before we turned on the microphones, we were talking about how to legally access psychedelics. And right now in Colorado and Oregon, they have psychedelic assisted therapy, which is like the first legal step, right? It's also following the same pattern as cannabis, right? Some of these cities have started to decriminalize psychedelic mushrooms. In fact, the entire state of Oregon decriminalized mushrooms. And then the next step for cannabis and for mushrooms has been medicalizing it, or making it so it's just for extreme cases, people with the medical conditions that qualify, and then also pay $3,000-$4,000 to get in the queue to have a 4-hour guided therapy session with a trained professional, which is out of the price range for a ton of people. The interesting balance that we have going on right now is so much information that is out there creating demand and interest in microdosing and psychedelics in general, but almost no access or legal access in this country. And so it's created this underground economy of product manufacturers that is taking the country by storm, and it's really mimicking that cannabis. Kind of, as you say, it's like, well, if enough people do it, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle. And so I find that inspiring and motivating and interesting to see, like, countries changing its entire attitude towards these substances just because of popular demand.
That's where the need comes in, and it gets strong. People that are desperate for solutions, they're willing to try things that prior to that they were terrified of it because they were told it was scary and bad and dangerous. And anything can be not healthy for you if you do it wrong or too much or any of that stuff. But some of these things do have some benefits. I'm all for what works, and if it works, why not? Especially if it's things that grow in the ground, then I'm even more apt to go, yeah, that makes sense. I was thinking about some of the, I don't know if you've ever seen these. There's some YouTube videos of LSD experiments that were done in the '60s, like black and white things where they'll have like a doctor, and then there's one I'm thinking of in particular. It was this woman. She was the wife of one of the other, I think one of the other doctors in the lab. I don't know where this was. And it was a government sponsored thing. And they took her from, when she first ingested the LSD to an hour later to 2 hours to 3 hours. And it was really fascinating. She looked just like this Betty Crocker housewife. It was hysterical to see her talking about all this, all these images, and then they'd have her draw. They're really great, folks. If you want to check them out, I'm telling you, but I'm telling the audience too. Just look up, type in on Google or YouTube LSD experiments from the '60s, something like that. And you'll see some really interesting videos about some of the early research that was done basically in government labs is where it was happening.
Yeah, in the '60s, at the same time, Timothy Leary and the guy who become Ram Dass were Harvard professors, and they were giving LSD to Harvard undergrads, and testing that. And they got fired from Harvard. And I remember coming across this little tidbit that the last professor who was fired before Timothy Leary from Harvard was Ralph Waldo Emerson.
No. Yeah, I mean, Timothy Leary was a fascinating guy. I got mixed feelings about him, but
yeah,
at least
no,
he was
kind of like the Malcolm X for psychedelics.
He certainly wasn't an adventurer. I'll give him that. I'm not sure it ended that well for him. Yeah, he wasn't afraid. Let's put it that way.
But I grew up really inspired by the writings of the beatniks, and then later Ken Kesey and Hunter Thompson, and reading about the '60s is what really got me interested in cannabis, psychedelics at an early age. And I don't expect or have my hopes up that psychedelics are going to change the world or help us all evolve to a new state of consciousness in my lifetime anyways. But if we can build on that progress that we really seem to be making towards consciousness expansion in the '60s, and build from that and make any sort of progress and positive steps towards it, that's what brings me back to it. And the community that is involved in mushrooms is such a loving one that I really enjoy spending time around. And I really say that there's no small talk in mushrooms. I go to conferences, and I'll even have just my Mycroboost booth up, and people will come up to me and they're like, "Is this your mushroom company?" I was like, "Yeah, it is." And they're like, "I'm bipolar, just like, how can you help me?" I'm just like, first off, I'm Bob, what's your name? But people are really looking for solutions, and really upfront about what's bothering them, and looking to connect with people. And I think that is what, inspired me from the beginning.
Well, if there are things that can make people feel better and the world a kinder place, then I say, let's go for it. But, like you say, it's not a cure all for anything. It's just, it's part of the package of how to maybe move through the world in a way that's a little bit more productive in all areas.
Whenever I think religious extremists are against these things, I say, hey, take it up with God.
Exactly. He made it. If we can remove the fear of these things, well, like most fear, it's irrational. At some point, you get to be very terrified of something in a way that's so visceral and so limiting that people aren't even able to get past that to even take a look. But take a look and then decide. You don't have to take anything yourself, but just sort of examine what's going on. And, if it doesn't work for you, so what? Don't do it. That's fine. But limiting other people seems to be counterproductive for both sides. Doesn't make sense to me.
A natural part of human evolution and progressing is that, that eating from that tree of knowledge is going to give us a new perspective that might make it harder for our next progress, but that's how we change and grow.
Yeah, I like to say that many people walk around having a near life experience.
That's a good one.
This is where a lot of teenage angst comes from. There's a realization as you hit those years that there's something more, but it's not being talked about. And you can't really get your hands around it, your head around it. You can't really know what it is, and because it's a sense, it's an intuition. And I think a lot of, particularly teenagers, they kind of see through the facade because they can at that age, but they don't have an answer. And some of it's just brain chemistry, but the other part of it is there's got to be something else than what I'm being told and what I'm being shown. And for me, that was, I couldn't even put it into words at that time. But I did have a sense that there was a missing piece to the information I had been receiving.
Exactly the same experience. Grew up Catholic and going to school in in Houston, Texas, and moved from San Diego before that. So it was a real big paradigm shift for me at a young age, and I moved into this cookie cutter suburb, and it started making me question just about everything.
It's brutal, man. Parents want to help their children, but if they can't in those situations, they just, because they don't know either. And it's a fascinating thing, where I mean, I was fortunate that I was a tail end hippie. So I caught the tail end of the whole thing. And so that stuff was going around in the world, and in my world. So there were people turning me on to these various types of music and thoughts and the drugs and all, the psychedelics. So I had a taste of a lot of that, and it did open me up in a lot of ways, and permanently. But certainly when you come down off of a particular drug, and let's just pick LSD because it's very potent, the experience that the intensity of the experience doesn't last because you're not on it anymore. You're not experiencing the chemical effects, but there is a residual sort of knowledge that you have. Now, I did see some people go off the deep end and do it way too much. Unfortunately, there were some casualties that I witnessed. Sure. So, moderation is another one of my favorite things. Balance. A little bit might be good, but too much is almost never good. Even you can drink too much water and get fucked up. You can mess your whole body up. So there you go. There's my 2 cents.
I was researching a lot about ayahuasca. And again, for this paper, I was just trying to find, not just anecdotal stories about people on these substances, but scientists and neurologists who are showing like what actually happens to your brain when you're taking these things. And one of the interesting things I found about ayahuasca is your brain lights up in 2 different areas, and one is part of the brain that is typically firing when you're awake, but then there's another just like huge lit up area that is usually only lit up when you're asleep. If there's anything like 100 years from now that we're going to look back on and say like, I can't believe we didn't give that much thought or credit to the idea that we go into this other state of consciousness every night when we go to sleep, and we're just like dealing with whatever we need to still process through the day, through our unconscious and our subconscious, and we're manifesting stuff in real time and symbols. And so I think that is really fascinating that, people's experience of taking ayahuasca just anecdotally sounds like this sort of lucid dream, and sometimes they even like have conversations with dead relatives just like they're sitting right there, just like you would in a dream. And so I find it cool that science is now proving like this is exactly what's happening, and the implications of where we go when we sleep are even more fascinating.
Yeah, and is that reality any less of a reality? Especially now that you can access it in the waking state, because exactly. We sort of see waking state reality as the reality, and the dreaming state as it's dreams. It's not real. But then now you're awake and dreaming. So which is it? Are you crazy? Is it real? I mean, it's, I've had these experiences. I think they're states between waking and dreaming. So they're more like experiences where you've had these, everyone has. You wake up and you go, oh my God, that was so real. I just, I just talked to a dead relative. Mm-hmm. I've had conversations with, people I've never met that I sort of admire. And they've talked to me in a way that is, they're there kind of like I've accessed that, I'm not saying anything amazing is about that other than the experience when you come out of it is incredible. I've had visitation in dreams from dead relatives. I've had that. Mm-hmm. I think most people have. It's just too prevalent.
Exactly. Same thing with psychedelics, right? There's so many experiences that millions of people have said have had this experience, but until it's empirically proven by scientists, skeptics are always just going to say like, well, that was all in your head.
Yeah, well, and also, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, I guess that's the point. Is like, if it's just in your head, does that make it any less real than just in life?
And audience people, I'm not advocating anything, and I'm not disparaging anything. We're just talking about this stuff. That's all there is. I'm not saying go take LSD today. I'm definitely not saying that. I will not be doing that today. So, Robert Johnson, what a fabulous talk. I really enjoyed talking to you, man. I love these topics. I like to expand the whole brain and the whole idea of health and possibility, and you've done that today with me. Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation too, Bob. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, and Mycroboost is the destination. Is there any other destination that people might want to get some more? I know you've got a lot of articles too. So
yeah, Mycroboost. It's spelled with a Y, like mycology. mycroboost.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram. My Rolling Stone articles. Now, if you just Google Robert Johnson mushrooms, you'll find my, I think it's a dozen articles or so now on Rolling Stone. Used to be, I had to type Robert Johnson Rolling Stone mushrooms, but now I think we're getting some good SEO there. But if you find something about the guy who created the blues or sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads, that's a different Robert Johnson.
Yeah, also worth your time, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but it's a different thing. Have a fantastic day, man. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. The YouTube channel, where you can also listen, is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Robert Johnson for being on the show. Check him out at microboost.com. That's micro, MycroBoost, Mycroboost, for all things mushrooms of the highest quality. Thanks. Have a fantastic day.